I'd like to share some things in from the cloud of unknowing, from a few texts. Then we'll open this up for questions. Again, how would that be? See, remember we said that you're sitting there in a moment of say, look at the set with this, giving yourself over to the beauty of the setting sun, giving itself over to you. Remember that? And we said it's a moment of heightened awareness, but you're not thinking. Remember that? You're not remembering, you're not willing, it's not sensual, all of that. And then you having had a taste of that, there is path talk. It's the desire to abide in the depths so fleetingly glimpsed. See, how can I learn to abide? But how can we do that? And this is the logic for practice. And I'm going to use the cloud of unknowing centering prayer logic. We can't make these moments happen, but we can assume the inner stance that offers the least resistance to be overtaken by what we can make happen. So here's centering prayer. I'm going to take a word. To say the word is mercy. And I'm going to practice my centering prayer. This is the I love you prayer too. And as I'm sitting there practicing my centering prayer, I notice thoughts arising and falling out the corner of my mind like this, rising and falling. The goal is don't reject the thoughts, but do your best not to think about the thoughts that are arising. Because if you think about the thoughts that are arising, thought will carry you off. See? So what you do is you look at thought and say to the thought, mercy, 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 mercy. And the you that has thoughts and the you that is thoughts dies in the emptiness in which you wait for God. You sit there a little bit longer and memories arise, all kinds of memories. And you do your best not to remember the memories. Because if you remember the memories, memory will carry you off again. So you turn to the memory, mercy, 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 mercy. And the thought that has memories, the thought that is memories, dies in the emptiness in which you wait for God. Emotions arise, sadness, or fear, or burden, mercy, 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 dies in the emptiness in which you wait for God. Little by little by little by little, this way. You might sit a little bit longer this way. I'll say this as a Catholic. And you're sitting there in centering prayer, and a Catholic thought enters the room and says something Catholic. You know? Does this church approve of this? Or a biblical thought enters the room. Do not get into discussion with a biblical thought. You'll become biblical. This is who biblical people are. They're people who listen to biblical thoughts. It's a little while, and a naughty thought enters the room. And you don't get in discussion with a naughty thought. I gave a retreat once at an Episcopal monastery, a room full of Episcopalians at the monastery. And I said, do Episcopalians have naughty thoughts? And the prior raised his hand and said, we do, but we always have them with dignity. And what starts to happen, if you're called to, if you're called to, what starts to happen in the midst of the sitting is the welling up of infinity pouring itself out and completely giving itself away as the gift and the miracle of the sincerity of your heart this way. And the author of The Cloud of Unknowing says, when we sit like this, we sit with it in earnest. During the rest of the day, we're always at it playfully. We're always in the web and the flow of the love that's woven through the unfolding of our days this way. And then we live it and walk it and share it with others. There's a critical passage in the Cloud of Unknowing. I'd like to read it on the point of theosis or divinization. So he's taken this word, and this is chapter 38. Chapter 38 of the Cloud of Unknowing. Why do you suppose this little prayer of one syllable is powerful enough to pierce the heavens? Well, it is because it is the prayer of a person's whole being. Someone who prays like this prays with all the height, the depth, the length, and the breadth of his spirit. His prayer is high, for he prays in the full power of his spirit. It is deep, for he has gathered all his understanding into this one little word. It is long, for if this feeling could endure, he would go on crying like this forever, as he does now. And it is wide, because with universal concern, he desires for everyone what he desires for himself. It is with this prayer that a person comes to understand with all the saints the length, the breadth, the height, and the depth of the eternal, gracious, and almighty and omniscient God, as St. Paul says. Not completely, of course, but partially in that obscure manner characteristic of contemplative knowledge. Length speaks of God's eternity, breadth of his love, height of his power, depth of his wisdom. Little wonder, then, that when grace transforms a person to this image and likeness of God, his prayer is so quickly heard by God. I'd like to reflect on this. Let's say you're sitting there and the highest thing that you can do, like what's the highest thing that you're capable of? The highest thing that you're capable of is the desire to give yourself completely to God who's eternally given to you. That's the high, and your prayer embodies that desire. But here's the point, that the height of your desire unfolds and blends and merges into the infinite height of God. And so the height of your desire and the height of God become non-distinct from each other, which is the divinization of yourself in the height. And the deepest thing you can do, you bury all your knowledge into this one little word. You bury it all in the one little word. It is so deep. And the depth of the sincerity of that depth opens out upon the abyss-like depth of God, welling up. And so the depth of your sincerity and the poverty of the prayer becomes undistinct from the abyss-like depth of God. And it is wide because you desire with universal concern to be that everyone might be, you wish for everyone the liberation that you desire for yourself. It includes everyone. And the breadth, width of your desire becomes undistinct from the salvific will of God this way. And this is divinization through love this way. And so he says, then when we live this way, we live it in our ordinariness this way and called to it. St. Teresa of Avila, mentioned earlier, I'd like to talk about Teresa for a minute, too. For Teresa, there's no method for Teresa. She doesn't have a word. We're like the Jesus prayer. She says, what you're doing, you're sitting there in devotional sincerity. And she says, in the fourth mansion, she says, the first three mansions of the soul going into the innermost seventh mansion of union with God, where God's waiting for you in there. The first three mansions are psychological, spiritual maturity. This way. The fourth mansion, you're sitting there in sincerity. She said, imagine a basin filling with water, and the basin overflows. But imagine a basin filling with water, and instead of overflowing, it keeps expanding to accommodate the water flowing into it. And you realize that's what's happening to your heart. Your heart's being enlarged to divine proportion, and you surrender to it and let it have its way with you. See? And you say to yourself, what will become of me if I surrender myself to this? What will become of me if I don't? This way. And that's Teresa, seventh man. She said, people... in the third mansion, psychological, spiritual maturity, they do go sailing. They're virtuous people. We need more third mansion people. But they're always careful to keep the shore in view. They're always careful to circle back around to know their reference point of where they are. Imagine you fall asleep in a little boat like this. And imagine that in the middle of the night, you're sound asleep in this little boat, that God tiptoes out. And the boat is moored by two ropes on either side of this little slip that the boat is in. And God carefully takes the rope off one side and lowers it in the water. And then comes around to the other side. And that's where you get unmoored from all your understandings about who you are on this earth. And then God comes around to the other side and unmoored, and being careful not to laugh and wake you up. And God takes the rope off. Everything you understand about God, lowers it in the water. And God gives the boat a little nudge this way. And the tide carries the boat out into the open water this way. And when you wake up, you sit up in the middle of the boat, no land in sight. And God says, gotcha. This way. That's way. And there's a point of a delightful no return in the unfolding of something ordinarily, day by day in your life. For Meister Eckhart is different. Meister Eckhart, there's no method either. Meister Eckhart says this. Meister Eckhart says, he speaks about the ground of God, the abyss-like ground of God, deeper than the Trinity, deeper than the abyss-like depth of God, the ground of God. In the generosity of God, God gives God's own ground as your ground. So your ground and God's ground are one ground. So there's already an infinite unity that is the reality of who you are. And the whole goal of the spiritual life is to find your way to the ground, the oneness. And here's an image from Meister Eckhart. Imagine you're standing looking at a full-length mirror. And imagine that the image of you is a thinking, reflective image of you. And it's been on a lot of retreats, it's been through a lot of therapy. And it feels it no longer needs you. You try to explain to the image, it won't go well without you because it's an image of you. And it says, no, you're trying to hold me back this way. And so to prove your point, you step halfway off the side of the mirror, half the image disappears, has a panic attack, has to go back on Xanax, goes into therapy. I'm not real, I'm not real. See? The image is real, it just isn't real the way I thought it was real. And that's the way Eckhart says this is the true of us. See, it isn't just that we're in a relationship with God. And it's not just that God's in a relationship with us, but God's relationship with us is the reality of us. See? That's the thing, actually, that we are God's manifested presence. That if God, in a self-donating act, if God would cease loving us into the present moment at the count of 3, in the present moment, we'd all disappear. See? Because we're nothing, absolutely nothing, outside the manifestation of the love of God. It isn't as if I sure hope God helps me give these talks. I'll muddle through. See, I'll get by. See, if God doesn't help me give the talk, if God doesn't love me into the present moment giving the talk, it's no me. See, this way. And not only that, not only are you who God knows you to be, but you are who God knows you to be before the origins of the universe, hidden with Christ in God. See, the cause like this. And so what we're trying to do is to come to this kind of state of this kind of sensitivity or awareness of ourselves in this way.